Creating this is the key to remember how Phainon works forever. If you just take part in the thought process of understanding Phainon, then everything about his kit will click logically. And now looking at this, it surely confuses you what all this gibberish is, but give me a chance and I will guide you through it. So let's start. The most important thing you want to do with Phainon is to cast this cool meteor skill of his, which is highlighted with this button. But before we can cast this cool skill of his, we first need to gain Scourge, is how it's called, which is this thing right here. So now you can see we have 6 out of 4. But to be able to cast this skill, we need to enter Phainon's cool ultimate form, of course. So if you're in the ult form, then you can gain this Scourge, and if you have enough, you can cast the meteor skill. And if you have 4, then it is recommended to cast this skill. Since if you have 4 of this, then the skill will do more damage. Sure, you can cast it if you have like 1 or 2, but if you use this skill when you have 4, it will do more damage, so it is recommended to do that. And the max of this Scourge you can hold is 7 at a time. But okay then, how do we gain the Scourge to begin with then? Well, when you enter his ult form of Phainon, you will get 4 right away, which is pretty nice. But you can also gain the Scourge when you use Phainon's enhanced basic attack as well, which is available when you're in his ult form. And you will get 2 of that when you cast this other enhanced counter-attack skill of his. He will gain Scourge depending on how many enemies there are on the field, so enemy count. And we will go into more specifics about this skill in a moment, but there's also one other way for Phainon to get this Scourge, and that is when you cast his technique. Since when you enter the battle with his technique, you will gain 2 Scourge as well. So these are all the ways for Phainon to gain this Scourge to cast his cool meteorite skill. Okay then, we see that all of this is dependent on Phainon being in his ultimate form. So how do we enter his ult form to begin with? Well, for that we need to gain Core Flame, which is indicated by this count right here, but it is also visually depicted here. And if you have enough of this Core Flame, specifically 12, then you can cast his ultimate. So if you consume 12 of these Core Flame, then you can cast ultimate, and Phainon can do all his enhanced abilities right here. So then the question arises, how do we gain this Core Flame to begin with? Well, there are many ways, luckily for us, but one note though, Phainon can hold max 15 of these Core Flames, but he only requires 12 to cast his ultimate. So if you have any excess, it doesn't matter, nothing will be lost. It will be available after his ultimate ends. But okay then, how do we gain this Core Flame? Well, first of all, when his ult ends, then he will gain some Core Flame, which is 3. The other way is at the start of battle. Then he will gain just 1. Other way is, when you cast Phainon's his skill, he will gain 2. And the last, most important way is, when he is the target of an ability, then he will gain +1 always. And him being the target of an ability basically means when he gets attacked, even by AoE attacks, by enemies, or also like when the enemy inflicts dot on your whole team. It is not an attack, but it's still an action. He is still being a target of that action of being targeted by that dot. So that's why he will gain 1, 2. Or when he gets locked onto by any enemy, because some enemies just like lock onto a couple of allies and then next turn they do something, and that lock also counts as being a target of an ability, of course. But the most consistent way for Phainon to gain his Core Flame is when it's a target of an ally's abilities, which is also the easiest way for us to consistently give him his Core Flames. And the nice thing is though, when we target him with, let's say, a Bronya ult or Bronya skill or Ho-Ho ult, whatever, if it's an ally that targets him, he will gain 30% crit damage, which is pretty nice, which lasts for 3 turns, so pretty long luckily. But the cool thing is though, if this ally's ability that targets Phainon also regenerates energy for him, sure he himself doesn't use energy, but if it would give energy, then Phainon will get 1 extra Core Flame. So if you target him with a Tingyun ult, you will gain 1 Core Flame because he got targeted by Tingyun's ult, but also another Core Flame because Tingyun's ult also regenerates energy for him. So we see there are many ways for Phainon to get his Core Flame consistently, and of course being the most consistent way when he is skilling himself or when he's a target of your allies' abilities, which is easier to control than being reliant on enemies, their abilities of course. And luckily his ult literally gives us 3 Core Flames when it ends, which I was appreciated. Another thing that this ult gives us is that he will get for free 50% attack percentage. It stacks 2 times, and luckily for us, at the start of the battle he also gets the same attack bonus, and it has no cooldown. So when the battle starts and his ult ends, he will have 100% attack bonus. But there's also another nice thing when Phainon's ult ends, and that is that he will give your whole team 15% speed, which just lasts for one turn though, but still that momentarily speed buff will make it a bit more easier to get your core frames faster because now your supports like Sunday, Bronya, whoever you got can act faster. But alright then, we see the wall flow of Phainon already. Gain core frames, enter his ult, gain Scorch, spam it till his ult ends. But when does his ult end? Well, as you can see, he has this number right here, and this number basically means how many turns he got left. Since when he enters his ult, he will gain 8 extra turns. And the nice thing about these extra turns is that it like freezes buff durations. So that means all the buff duration buffs you have given him, like a buff with Bronya, her skill, which says for the next 2 turns, the target ally's damage increases for 50%. Because Phainon's ult gives him 8 extra turns, that text of Bronya's skill saying it lasts for 2 turns is frozen, since extra turns do not consume buff durations. So you can basically spam all the buffs on him, and when he enters ult, they will just stay there with him. And then after these extra turns have ended, then this thing right here will glow red. And that means that he will do a cool final hit, which will then result in Phainon ending his ultimate. But if by any chance you died while being in Phainon's his ult, so if he dies, he will not actually die. He will just immediately cast his final hit. But the damage of this final hit will be reduced though, since the more turns you had left when Phainon died in his ult, the less damage his ult will do now. But dying while in his ult form is pretty difficult, only if you are underleveled maybe, since when Phainon enters his ultimate, he will have access to pretty nice buffs which help him in his sustaining. Because first of all, he will gain 270% max HP, and his attacks recover 20% of his max HP, so he heals the whole time when he attacks. Plus he will be crowd control immune, so CC immune, which means he cannot get entangled or frozen or imprisoned, nothing hindering. So these things here will help him with his survivability. But on top of that, all enemies will have physical weakness, which is pretty nice. So if you weakness break them, they cannot do anything. Also helps him a bit with his survivability. And at last, he will gain 80% attack bonus, which is always appreciated. So we see he won't die that fast, but still he won't truly die. He will just end his ultimate. If he dies, and he would have like 25% HP left or something. But getting to this point is quite difficult, since when he's in his ult form, he will have this pretty nice counter mechanism going on. So if you're in a situation where you don't have enough Scorch stacks, where you cannot cast his Meteor skill yet, because you don't have 4 yet, then you can cast this cool counter skill of his. And this counter skill helps him with surviving too a bit, because when you cast it, Phainon will automatically immediately receive less damage, which is like 75%. But he will advance all enemies' their actions though, which is not bad though. That's because whenever Phainon is in this state, which lasts until the start of his next turn, when he's in this state and all the enemies have action forwarded, every time an enemy now attacks you or just takes an action, all of this will give Phainon one of these stacks here. And these stacks are pretty nice, since the more he has of these, the more damage that counter attack of Phainon will do when he gets his turn. And on top of these nice Scorch stacks he will get, the more enemies there are, the more of these stacks here he will get, since all the enemies now have gotten an action, they've attacked you or have like buffed themselves, which also counts as taking an action, so they don't even have to attack you. Finally, you will just get these stacks for free. The more damage this cool counter attack of his will do. And if you're like, damn, sustaining with Phainon is really difficult, then you can still run him with a sustainer, since when you heal or shield Phainon, he will just get a 45% damage bonus, which lasts for 4 turns. So Phainon wouldn't miss out that much if you ran him with a sustainer instead of a buffer. Sure, of course he will do less damage, but still he wouldn't do that little damage. But of course, running him sustainless is the preferred way to maximize his damage. And the last thing we haven't discussed is his technique. Yes, we know it gives him 2 Scorch stacks when you enter the battle with it. It also, as you might have guessed, will just kill all the small enemies immediately without entering battle. But if you use this technique on a big boy enemy like elite or boss monsters, then you will just enter battle. And when you enter battle, you will enter battle with 1 extra skill point, and all allies of yours will get 25 energy, which is 8. And as you might have seen though, when you have Phainon in your team, your maximum technique points will be 8 instead of 5, but it will cost 2 skill points though to cast Phainon's technique. It's no biggie. And at last, when you cast Phainon his Meteorite skill, all the debuffs he would have on his head will be dispelled. Sure, he is crowd control immune, but still he can get dots on his head, so he will just cleanse that. And this is the wall flow of Phainon basically. Just get your core flames, cast your ultimate, you now got 8 extra turns, which means you want to cast as many of these meteorite skills as possible, but you can't because it's recommended to cast it only when you have 4 of these scorch stacks, because then you will do more damage if you cast it instead of when you had 2, because then it would do way less damage. So that means we need to gain these scourges consistently, and you can gain it when you just cast his normal enhanced basic attack, or you cast his counter skill, and you will get these scourges depending on how many enemies there are on the field, since when you cast this counter skill, all the enemies will get their actions advance forwarded, and the more enemies attack you or take an action, you will gain more of these stacks, which will increase the counter damage Phainon would do. And of course, regarding Phainon's build, it's pretty simple. Just use the wave item on him because it's made for him. And for the 2-piece, use the Arcadia one because that's also basically made for him. And for the Litecoin, just use On the Fall of an Eon. You can get it for free in the Hereby shop if you just play your Simulate Universe consistently and can die for each universe. And then you will be all set for him. So I thank you for paying attention and see you the next time. Bye.